Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes and definitely it will be very much interesting. I think that everybody know about Mr. Iftekhar's as well as Dr. William, Mr. James, and we have our new guest for World Talent Economy Forum, Mr. Vishals. So they have some sort of interesting project they are doing right now in India. Beside that, we have our regular analyst, Dr. Williams and James Eid. They will give some sort of feedbacks and analysis on their projects. And by this way, hopefully it will be very much effective, especially for South Asia and even Asia Pacific. I'm sure many audience from different universities and corporations, they will observe today's sessions. So I want to start with Mr. Iftekhar Pathan. So what do you want to share with us today?
Yeah, so I'd just like to say hello to all you guys and all your viewers as well. I also want to thank you, Dr. Sharif, for having me and my co-founder Vishal Naik on this World Talent Economic Forum. You're doing a great job, and congratulations on that. Well, we are based out of India. We are near Mumbai in a city called Pune, and both me and Vishal uh, have come together and formed a company that is called Meta Social. We are for profit, but working for the non-profit world. As you know, that there has been a paradigm shift in the terms of how the government looks at the CSR in India. In 2014, the corporate social responsibility spend was made mandatory. We were the first country to basically do this in the world. And since then, there's a huge amount of money that is being spent on CSR and, to benefit the society at large. So what we did is we want to really start an enterprise. We wanted to start an enterprise that will get transparency in this business, and hence we launched Metasocial. So it is Vishal Naik, who has had illustrious career. The last 20 years, he's been in the IT side of things, and he was with large companies like Amdocs, for example, heading the MI, the artificial intelligence and machine learning. At the same time, I come from a background in business, but having grown from rock bottom to what I do today, I always wanted to do some business that has an impact to it. So that's how when Vishal returned from the UK, he wanted to do something for the country, and I was looking at starting something in the tech world that will benefit the society at large in my country and slowly take it out to the world. We decided to start this enterprise. So what I'm going to do is that I'll request Vishal to take us through first what Metasocial is all about, and then we'd like to talk about a very interesting concept that we have come up with, which is called digital dan. So giving digitally, that's what we mean. And what we're doing in that, again, Vishal will obviously explain that in much details, but just a quick lead in that we're trying to reach out to the 35 million Indian diaspora who spread across the world, and most of them are affluent in doing good for themselves. And due to the current dispensation and Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a lot of people are interested to do good to their own country. So we will appeal to them, and we are trying to bridge the big void that has come due to pandemic in India. For the past 1 year, there has been hardly any education, and most of the people who are undeserving and have absolutely no infrastructure for education, we will give them one laptop each family, and we've decided to donate 10,000 such laptops. So that is one of the large initiatives that we have undertaken. And I'll now give the floor to Vishal. Vishal can take over and explain to us both about Meta Social as a company, and the initiative called Digital Dan. Over to you, Vishal.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Mr. Vishal can give feedbacks. We have our another professor from California. We have, I think after Mr. Vishal presentations, we will get some sort of feedbacks and analysis from Dr. William, Professor Donalds, and Mr. Jem Eid.
Wonderful.
Yes. Mr. Vishal.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif, for having us as part of this program. Really happy to be part of this forum. I think we have heard some very interesting dialogue and discussions which have been initiated here and been taken into initiatives before. So, sorry if the network is a bit sketchy. I'm in my hometown in Goa in this thing, so we had to come down for some family emergency. But just to give you a quick background about MetaSocial. So MetaSocial is a for-profit social enterprise. Our mission is to enable the integration of the online and the offline world in the social ecosystem to kind of scale the impact. So getting different players who are there, who are doing a lot of initiatives, working on ground to kind of actually impact causes across India and globe. How do we get them together? Be it the corporates, institutions, foundations, HNIs, ultra HNIs, citizens, local bodies, and how do you make to work with nonprofits? At the moment, in the first 18 months, we are working right now to kind of focus on nonprofits. It eventually could be sustainable for-profit enterprises, which is having a high impact within the society in terms of anything. So we are agnostic, although we are focusing on few areas to begin with in terms of what we are doing. So that's what we are kind of started. And within this, what we found is we are building an ecosystem which will be able to enable, communicate, and scale impact, right? And we are right now focusing on India, and we kind of worked with a lot of leaders across the globe as well to understand what are the challenges, what are the things which are impacting people within the social ecosystem. And we found three things which is there. One is trust. Even if there's a lot of money available out there to kind of, how do we trust the right causes, the right NGOs, the right enterprises to kind of come towards that? How do we have a channel to kind of move the right amount of, and it's just not money, but actually mentoring and anything else that can actually help on ground, okay, channel through this. So the trust deficit is something we found as a big distinct, trust and transparency. The second was getting resources, be it people, consultants, companies, products, or physical resources. It's very, very difficult for the social enterprises to get that, get at the right time, and at the in case of a product, get it at the right price so it can be used on the ground and it's viable for them to run their projects. And the last piece, which is the most important one we found, is most of the on-ground NGOs who are working are not able to communicate their impact. They're not able to show the right social return on investment on what they're doing. They're not able to highlight their stories in the social media or other channels because this industry has been kind of laggard in adopting technology. So this is what we found. And at MetaSocial, what we looked at is three aspects. Transparency. So we are using blockchain to kind of build that and have a decentralized system to do that. We're using AI to do the matchmaking between the fundraisers, the resourcing, and this thing. And the third one, we're using the power of social media and some of the exponential technologies to communicate impact. So that's what we are doing right now. And while we are doing, in order to scale this thing, we wanted to act as an enabler rather than do ourselves. So kind of enable, get partners together, get people together to move the causes that they're doing. If they're doing, say, if they were helping, say, 500 children this year, how can they go to 5,000 to 50,000 while keeping the quality in place, right? We want to give quality education, let's say. That's something we're working. And we were part of the organizing team, which we did one of the biggest summit in India, which we invited 72 leaders across the globe, including the National Technology Officer of Microsoft, some of the biggest pyramidal foundations, some of the biggest funds in India and in US to come and talk about that. And we've been thinking about how do we take this to people? How do we connect them? And while talking with Dr. Nikhil Agarwal, who is one of the incubators for startups in India, and they've been incubating a lot of social startups, we found that during this COVID, one of the things which have been really highlighted now is there has been a missing digital infrastructure. There's a complete digital divide between the privileged and the underprivileged. I coming from a technology sector, it's very easy to say when in doubt, just Google, right? And that to most of the people working with computers. But unfortunately, there's a huge section of students and society who don't have access to that, even a mobile phone or this thing. And not just the education, as in this year is going to be a 0 year for a lot of underprivileged kids, a lot of people in India and abroad. But going beyond that, as in if you have access to digital infrastructure, the right mentoring and the right programs, the whole access to knowledge and experiences can turn an individual. And that can be a differentiator for eradication of poverty, better healthcare, better careers and everything. So looking at this, we started with an initiative, which is Digital Dana, which means digital giving, which is in terms of thing where as our first kind of attempt, we're looking to connect with 10,000 underprivileged families and give them a kit with a laptop, internet connection for 2 years, and the curated content, which is what we are enabling from an infrastructure perspective. We have identified implementation partners across 12 corridors in India right now, which will actually connect. So just giving a laptop doesn't solve the problem, right? So we are working with nonprofits, which have been working with government schools and this thing where they have been engaged for last 2 years or 3 years to define programs, and that's what we're doing. So this program is going to augment the need on ground on what they're doing, and then supported by mentoring and other things. And we are actually encouraging some of our donors who are coming that can you do the Gyan Dan, which is the knowledge donation, as in kind of if I kind of translated to the people who are doing. So you are giving a much more commitment than just a monetary donation. Can you be part of that? So that's what we have embarked on, and we have tied up with India Global. We have tied up with some of the big institutes. So we've just started with that, and we're looking to reach out to the global Indian diaspora and eventually to even the foreign nationals who come and support in this thing. And our idea is not just to stop at this. This is a 3-year mission that we have taken because you can't change things overnight, right? So how do you look? We start with infra, then we start with mentoring, then we start with things. And so the first 12 months, 12 to 18 months, we want to do that in India, see how it works, experiment, and then take it to other developing countries, take it to other geographies where this model can work. Also, we are already working with some of the other geographies to learn from what they're doing. So we have tied up with some of the nonprofits from Far East, actually from Philippines, who have been working with 25,000 NGOs. So we kind of do a cross-sharing of knowledge as well. So this is what we have embarked on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Vishals. Professor Donalds, can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. My question is that, like, example, you are from the innovative industry. We have Dr. William from the policy level and this kind of things. Even Mr. Jamid, he has also foundation or something like that. My question is that, like, how do you want to share your experience from the innovative industry, especially from, you have experience from Stanford University, from Silicon Valley. How do you want to share your experience with our audience? And India taking, especially Mr. Iftikhar and Mr. Vishals taking a very good initiative for developing their human resources. And with 10,000 laptop for India, I think this is very, very big initiative. So how do you want to share your views in terms of their experience. But I am happy that if they have any kind of website or anything, we can share with our audience. I'm sure our audience will ask for their website or any of their content. So, Professor Donald.
Well, I had a few questions listening to it, which is when you're talking about measuring impact, you're talking when you're talking about impact, you were talking about using social media to broadcast the impact. How do you measure the impact? I'm really curious about that. That's a kind of a tough one.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a very important aspect, because giving a laptop out is just an output of the program, right? In terms of we enable that, we give it to a school or a kid. It's just output of the program. So we are in fact working on building a theory, social return on investment tool. We are using some of the frameworks which are available in this thing, which focuses on what is the output of our program, what is the outcome, and what would be the impact. So we are looking at in terms of not only just getting access to digital information, how would that impact the child in terms of outcome for this year, in terms of what they're doing, right? How is it improving access to content is one of the parameters. How is it improving in terms of the next 3 years? Okay, how we are looking to measure the students which didn't have access in some of the other thing versus students who had access to this. And we have actually started initiative to develop, because this 6 months is and to be very this thing, it's more of an experiment to understand on ground. So we have identified 12 different heterogeneous kind of sites where we want to start with this pilot. This is more of a pilot for us to do, and we're looking, and that's why I said 3 years time, right? In terms of doing that, we want to measure the impact over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of doing that. And it will be more in terms of what are we able to drive with this being a catalyst where you're enabling the access. How are you impacting the access to content to that? How is it impacting their grades in terms of what they did versus last year's? How is it impacting their what career choices they're taking? And we've been doing surveys to understand what is the student or the people on the ground with the nonprofits that we have been working. What is their aspiration? What is this thing, right? How do you enable some of the star students in doing things better? So those are the things. And in fact, we are in the process of right now understanding, rather than we define, we think this is X and this is how impact is doing. We want to work this as a pilot in the next 6 to 12 months, and then actually build a complete this thing. So we are working with some of the professors, some of the universities in India to build this together and actually do it on ground rather than just write it. Of course, we have identified certain KPIs, as I said, in terms of learning, in terms of access to curator, the grades that they're changing. Is there a change in terms of what they said they will do before in terms of the outcome versus after 1 year access to this thing, how are they doing? That is what we are looking at the moment.
Yeah, so just to add to what Vishal said, to be very upfront and share something with you is that at this point of time, the tech layer, as far as the donations are concerned, has already been done, and there is a blockchain play in it, and so transparency bit has been done. But as far as this assessment or measurement of the impact, there is no tech built, and we have initiated the talks with we have access to a couple of brilliant Indian professors at different universities, and we are now trying to work on that. And maybe it's a good idea that you should also help us, Professor Donald.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. William, how do you want to add your opinion, especially for these projects? And we want to know more about how actually US experience you want to share with us, that how their innovative industry works. And yes.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I like Donald. Hello, Donald, again. How are you?
Hi.
It's been a couple of days, but it's always nice to see you. And well, I guess I did have these questions, and that first, and that was that it seems to me, and I don't know if this is even relevant, but to the extent that the world is actually attempting to build up an entire network for the distribution of vaccines, when it comes to particular communities, there are certain people in every community that happen to be the go-to people in those communities, and oftentimes we find those, we will call them community leaders and things, um, uh, and they often are the multitaskers, and so they're handling not just one initiative but multiple initiatives. And I guess during your reach out and networking and building a network, in addition to learning from other countries, are you partnering with or discussing how they're building these other networks? Because they are essentially building networks from scratch. And I was curious how you guys are going about building your networks in terms of reaching into the communities.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. So I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how are you partnering with, in addition to everybody that's helping with the hardware, and then obviously software, and then trying to figure out how to measure the metrics in terms of boots on the ground, and when you get into communities, there are obviously multiple needs in any community at any given point in time, and there are always far fewer people that are leading those communities. Are you having a tough time competing for resources? Are you partnering with your talents as you move forward and roll out your plan?
Yeah. So yes, we are partnering because I think if we just rely on digital marketing, right, it's a very expensive medium to go through. The conversion rates are very low for a social initiative to really outright. And when you are looking at a global diaspora, it's too big an audience to run a whole digital campaign against. So
Mhm.
one, are we competing with other kind of initiatives and this? Yes, but now since the last 9-10 months, which we have been focused, and even India, and we have been on ground involved on healthcare initiatives to help people deliver food and things. But in the last couple of months, we have seen people are switching back. It's not that we're stopping doing in that, but they're switching because education was taking about 35% of the funds which was coming, and activities in India were at a kind of education. Healthcare was not much behind, 32% was focused around that. So there are initiatives kind of overlapping, which is there. But what we've got is a very good kind of response from some of our partners. We are working on an initiative which is on the lines of giving circles. Before COVID, you had giving circles on ground who decide on doing that, right? Those are your ears and network. So work on a network to building an effect of networks is what we are focusing, because if you do it on a word of mouth, or if you do it in terms of totally relying on digital listing, it will be very difficult to reach out to this. And what we are looking at is not just a donation or this thing, we're looking at also doing something. We're talking at Gyan Dan, where is like somebody sitting in US is sponsoring, can he take 1 hour or 2 hours in a week to kind of share certain this thing. So it could be even a small snippets of this thing, because sometimes you learn a lot for kids which are from the underprivileged if you give guidance on certain. So even if they have one takeaway, and we were just talking to another professor here in Pune just before this call, and we said, can there be one takeaway churn every day by someone who's really has the knowledge? So that's something we're doing. So we are working on generating a network of network effects, not only for donation, but actually generating mentoring and other supports for this implementing partners across, because they really need that. It's just not the infra or the money. They actually need people to push and being able to come up with innovative ideas to deliver content. That's very, very important.
Yeah. So, in fact,
Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
yeah. So just to add to what Vishal said, your question is how are we delivering the last mile
Yes,
effectively?
right.
So what we have done is that we work with a lot of NGOs in different states who are already working with children. And as you know, there is the urban poor and there is the rural part of India. So it's very difficult to reach and really go to the right student, for example, because otherwise there is going to be a large amount of pilferage, and there is going to be a lot of money being wasted. And every donor is worried about if the money is going to the right person and is it going to create some impact. So what we have done is two things. One is that we have built a layer of filtering if the donation is going to the right person, who is it going to? And then on ground, there are agencies that have been working for years with such children and such schools. So these are our partners. And apart from that, what we've also done is, for the local communities, we are doing a program called Children for Children,
Mhm.
in which we have
Mhm.
tied up with the large reputed universities and colleges in different parts of different states of India, who will then, within their community, because they know there's a squatter colony just round the corner, so they will go and distribute, for example, such benefits to the receiving party. So these are the methods that we are using at this point of time.
You see, and I think that's fantastic, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I wanted to ask the questions first was simply because I did not necessarily want to repeat that what you were already doing, and what the American experience has been, at least insofar as I've been a part of and or observed, and that is essentially this: that partnerships are better than going it alone, and then sometimes bundling with it might seem like a seemingly disparate group. So you may say healthcare, and then you may say, this program, they may not necessarily seem like they're together on their face, but in fact they are, because you're going through the same conduits, the same people, and sometimes those people are just a clearinghouse for understanding what information is out there, what programs are out there, and then getting them sent off to the right people so that they can then get into the place. And so oftentimes it's at least it's been my observation that organizations, when they start, and this is true for any organization around the world, and I guess for the audience, it's that when you begin to build something, you often have the sense that it's a daunting task because you have to start from scratch and you're doing it all on your own, and that's not necessarily true. It's rather that by discussing it and then bringing in other people and sharing ideas and being transparent, that is the fastest way. And I hate to say it, but there's nothing like letting a crisis go unused. And in this case, we have a crisis that is essentially distribution and infrastructure. And to the extent with regard to your organization, you're right. It is infrastructure, distribution, and as you said, the last mile. And so in that regard, the networking with people that are already established in the communities that can appropriately direct where the resources are, that is people that are on the ground that know the conditions. I did have one other question, and you raised it with regard to the difference between the urban poor and then the rural poor. And it seems to me, I don't know, and I'm curious to hear your answer on this. Oftentimes here in the United States or in the Western world, we talk about the digital divide. And oftentimes here in the United States, it is stark in terms of its difference between, say, urban and rural. And that's kind of how it breaks down here with regard to high-speed internet and such. But it seems to me that in your part of the world, that the digital divide applies both in urban centers as well as urban versus rural areas. And I was wondering if you could help us understand a little bit more about that problem, because I think that it's something that a great many people around the world don't necessarily understand that particular nuance, which is, I think, a major issue that you guys are going to be facing. Do I have that right or no?
Absolutely. You made a fantastic point.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you look at India, the most of the population is living in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a huge amount of people coming from the rural areas because they don't have the economics. There are no economy per se is not good, and for a better future, they tend to come to the cities, and
Right.
not just around a state, but also interstate. And in such times, there are so many schemes that the government has in which they are not necessarily covered. One example is when the pandemic happened, millions of people who were working in my state, Maharashtra, suddenly when on 24th March, Prime Minister Modi declared a lockdown, a lot of people said that, yes, it's a bold and nice decision. But as a consequence of that, so many of the laborers and the community who toil very hard on daily wages were left high and dry, and they didn't know what to do. So these are the people who are the vulnerable class that is basically migrated to a city for a livelihood. So they were badly affected. So within the city itself, you have different classes, and you have a lot of below the poverty line people and just above the poverty line people living. And there are so many schemes going to the people who belong to the state, but the ones which have come from outside, they have absolutely nothing. And the second part of it is the rural side. You want to say something? Sorry.
Well, no, actually, I just want as a point of clarification for the audience around the world, and that is to simply put it in perspective, if I might. So that when you refer to a state in India, you really, your states, the population really runs around anywhere from 250 to 320 some odd million people. And to put that in perspective, one state in the state of India is equal to the entire United States. And so that when you're talking about these migration challenges from rural to cities, you're essentially, if we were to put it in a context or a scale, that would be like taking the entire United States and witnessing people move from California all the way over to New York. It's that kind of scale. And my understanding is, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that it's not just with one state. You have multiple states with that size of population in that range, 250 million to over 300 million. And so that when you talk about these migration issues from rural to urban and the displacement, the numbers that you're discussing are on an order of a magnitude that would constitute whole nations if they were any other part of the world. Do I have that right?
Perfectly, because for example, the population that Bombay has is equivalent to what Australia is.
Right.
So yes, that's what we are. So we are like multiple countries all got into one large country called India. And then there are a lot of other issues, obviously, which is not the discussion point, but we have like 6,000 dialects and we have 24 official languages. And every time you cross one border, your language changes, your clothes change, your cuisine changes, and so on and so forth. So it is a complex country, and that's why the problems are unique and complex to be sort of solved. But coming back to your question of urban poor, we have a fairly large number that we are trying to, but there are a lot of schemes from the government that is of inclusion in the current dispensation. A lot of schemes that are there, which is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, or education for something, then food security, and all these things are being worked on, but it's a difficult and onerous task. And if you go into the rural area, it is again a larger problem. So yes, these are the two different distinct poor people and streams that we're talking about.
Mr. Jem, is like how do you want to add into like example, India come up with a different ideology, different cultures, different strategy. So definitely North America is completely different. Develop and developing nations, there are many challenges, even though that is the argument even last week we face as well, that the impact of shutdown, so impact of shutdowns in the developing nations and the developed nation is completely different. So what do you want to add?
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you for the show, and thank you to the other guests for their contributions. And I did want to start by saying that, I don't want to minimize the uniqueness, that the complexities involved in India, but I did want to focus a little bit on the similarities. For example, in a city like San Francisco, we have people coming from other places with the idea that they would find a job, and there aren't enough jobs. So there are a lot of homeless people in San Francisco. It's a horrible problem. And then we have people from less overpopulated places saying, "Oh, your government is bad," and that is not the solution. The solution is something that you're doing, which is what I want to applaud, because I've often said, and I didn't make this up, if a problem is accurately stated, it's half solved. And it sounds to me like you've accurately stated the problem, and you're well on the way to solving it. So I just wanted to point that out. My question, when you're bringing 10,000 laptops to people, I could use a laptop for a coaster. How do they access the internet? How do you bring that to them?
Correct. So I think one of the questions when we were talking about urban poor, right? So if one is to give a laptop, and then you have connectivity, and then you have this thing. So when we are giving a kit, which will include a laptop, which caters to a certain kind of age group, because we are not giving a $2,000 laptop. We're giving a good basic laptop which would be used for 10th or 12th kind of this thing in India. So we are giving a laptop. Then we are right now focusing on urban because we are also giving an internet connection using a dongle, which is with the local tie-up. So they get 2 years of internet connection and not just this thing, because you need connectivity. And then what we're doing is we are also tying up with content and mentoring. So just laptop could be, as you said, coaster purely, right? Because without internet, and even if you have internet, you don't have the right content, it's useless. So what we're doing is in the kit, we are working on adding an internet connection, which we have already tied up, and we are in the process of, we have a tie-up with few content providers, which we'll do, and we'll go actually a mile forward in this journey. Once we start with this and this thing, we want to do crowdsource content as well for this. So some of the donors could be their mentors, they could be who could generate content. They could be experts sitting in other countries that really can teach, say, maths for students in a very unique way. Maybe that 1 hour can change his perspective about maths, right? Mathematics. So we are putting a thing in place, and because of connectivity, I think one of our focus was urban poor right now. I'm not saying in rural India, India is quite well connected in the last 3 or 4 years, thanks to Jio and some of the other networks. But it's still, because we are talking about video content right now in this phase, it's probably urban this thing. Probably we go to rural, we'll have to work on other modes of medium or this thing through WhatsApp and through other mediums that we can do. So as Dr. Donald had asked, we are looking at this as an experiment to understand how the impact works. And next 1 year, we actually take, in fact, on the laptops as well, we're not just going, we are installing a small fraud management software, although the name we came up is wrong. It's not fraud, I would probably look at misuse, where we are looking at how often it is used, how often it moves from an area, is it being formatted, is it throw in a simple screen in right now it's in English, but we tend to do vernacular local languages where you can take feedback on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I just want to share one of my personal experience. In 2009, under the Cambrian Education Group, we take this kind of initiative. We provide laptop, and in between all of our academic staff as well as students. But reality is that this kind of initiative has very good impact. Even if it's in Bangladesh, I'm sure Bangladesh and Indian culture is not too much of different. We have very much a similar culture and everything. Reality is that if you can reach youth community with laptop, it's actually help a lot. And yes, definitely you need proper guideline, you need very good internet connections, you need good contents. This is our practical experience. Actually, the Cambrian Education Group create a huge impact. Not only that, reality is that business wise is become one of the largest, as because they are connecting with the digital industry, they are connecting with the internet, they are connecting with the computers and many more things, and students come up with a lot of idea, lot of startup, lot of success. You see last few years, if you observe that, like math Olympiad, Bangladesh doing very well. In debating championship, Bangladesh doing very well. In the physics Olympiad, Bangladesh doing very well. You can see even they are world champion. This is one of the impact. Like education industries, when they shares the modern technology, I'm sure that developing nations, they utilize much more better way. And it's my practical experience, and it's 11 years before. And I see even in our World Talent Economy Forums previously, Cambrian Education Group chairman also joined. So I'm sure practically I get it has a huge impact. Because young community, they are very innovative. If the right people get the laptop, I'm sure. Even I'm sure that India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they have a lot of NGO. They are actually very good in micro initiative. Always I said, example, BRAC is the largest NGO in Bangladesh. They are very good in micro initiative. Even India has many interesting initiatives,
I know,
which is much. Yes. Yes, which is very initiative. So, like I want to know more. Like, is there any like a practical initiative right now you are taking, or it's a plan, or you have a plan that in year 2021 you will implement these projects? What's the things, Mr.
So,
Rishab?
yes. First of all, I think I agree with the technology. And I think it's privileged to have the technology. I have a 4-year kid, and just having access, and I play around. I'm a techie, so I play around. So Alexa, he goes and asks a lot of things today. He knows how to use that. It's just 4 year, right? And imagine when we were young, for something in school, I used to go to a black book section of a library, and then we get access. I got access only in the 12th year of my education to a laptop, and we were very, very afraid. So having that in place and right is very important. Coming back to your question, yes, it's not just on a paper. We have started implementing. The campaign page is up. We are now working on building the algorithm around the analytics. We are working on engagement, this thing which is on the network. We are also already have the beneficiary app where you'll do the criteria and things. So in fact, we just yesterday, we got a huge plus pledge, which is for 100 kids, which is the first this thing that we have started with. One of the local corporates in Pune gave that. So we have already started rolling that in terms of this thing. But right now, because it's a big initiative and we are a startup, we wanted to take a step at a time, understand it's a 6-month journey into this initiative. We're starting that. So the next 1 month is building the right partnerships. I think, as our guest said, partnerships are very important. You can't move the mountain alone. You need to work with the right partners, both on ground and for networks and for marketing and getting that this thing. So we have already, so the next 1 month, in one side, we are already raising funds. We have started getting pledges. We have made the retail online. In the next 10 to 15 days, we are putting the whole platform online. And in January, we'll go full live with reaching out to the whole diaspora and everything. So the initiative is started from 28th of November, and we're looking to go through this for the next 6 months and actually make an impact in the next education year in India.
Yeah, so I think
Yes,
James
thank you.
wanted to say something. We started talking.
Oh,
so I
thank
think-
you. Yes, I was going to follow up on a couple of things that you were talking about. One of them, you actually solved the problem for me because I have a foundation that provides services, and there are people that need my services. And how do I find out about them, and how do they find out about me? And you're working with the partnerships with people that are already there, working with them, and so you're connecting with them to connect with the others that need your services.
Absolutely.
So that's an excellent solution, and one that I've jotted down to carry forward. And the other thing is, when you were talking about the metrics for measuring the impact, you have a status, say X, in community Y. Then you do bring in your program. So what is the status of community Y after your program? And that's what you want to measure. You don't want it to still be X. You want it to be X plus. And how do you determine what X plus is? And we had a question from the audience: is how do you define innovation? And I think that's relatively related in that your innovation is changing X to X plus. And
Exactly.
so what is X plus? That's the innovation. That's what you're doing. You're innovating and changing X to something that is not X. And that, I believe, is innovation in the broadest sense of the word, because what you're doing is novel. It's not being done. X is staying X. And so your innovation, what you're bringing into the community is changing it. Now, how you measure it, how you define it, is up to Professor Donald to tell us.
We are definitely, I'm going to pick up the call and reach out to him as soon as we finish the program.
Okay. Okay. Professor Donalds, how do you want to define the innovation, and specifically what your advice for today's team? Because they're doing something interesting, but practically I want to share, I know that they are very experienced. They have many positive and negative experience. So that's why they are thinking what's going on. We want to know more. So I think that maybe the presentations and these things, they will understand more about the project. But in terms of my practical experience, I'm sure that what they're doing, and previously they have a lot of success. Iftekhar Pathan's come up with a very interesting things and very successful projects inside India with many big corporations. So I'm sure even if it's in the initial stage, they will bring more success. But Professor Donald, what your experience you want to share with us?
Well, I've actually written some papers about innovation, and I completely agree that it's taking something and making it into something new, or also creating something new, which is much more difficult. There's basically, we call incremental innovation and disruptive innovation. When you come up with something new, there's always the problem is people don't know what it is. You have to take current things and relate them to things that already exist, even if it's disruptive innovation. Because if you come up with something completely new, it's random, right? Nobody can understand what it is, how to apply it, or anything else, which goes to the importance of networks. Networks are, well, I want to recommend two things to you right now. The Rotary Club is extremely good at distributing things to other Rotarians and then getting them out. And there's Rotary clubs all throughout India. In fact, Rotary is growing faster in India than anywhere in the world. And the people in Rotary have great integrity. That's how they help get the polio vaccine out. In one day in India, they vaccinated 150 million people in one day. They organized it so incredibly well. And I know the Rotary is highly regarded in India, so I really recommend that. And another place I want to recommend is, and the listeners can hear this too. I mean, this is an amazing organization in California. In fact, it's the biggest networking organization in California, the biggest one, and it's called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. Yes, yeah, you're familiar with TIE. Yeah, that's
we have a TIE chapter in the city.
Good, yeah, that's a great place to get mentors and connect to Silicon Valley. In fact, that's one of the richnesses of Silicon Valley is that we have things like the Indus Entrepreneurs, which allow us to get information from India and understand things that are going on there. I was a member. They were going to make me a charter member at one time, but I decided not to do that. But in any event, when we research innovation, what we find is that people don't just channel some mysterious force and come up with something that's absolutely new. People borrow things from one social world into another. So the comment that not separating the networks that perhaps distribute COVID vaccine from the networks that distribute that you're wanting to do to be able to get out and make the connections that you want to do can sometimes be the exact same network, because
right,
you can, in some instances, you can have. As I said this once before earlier, is that I got to know one of the absolute top entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, a guy named Suhas Patil. He invented fabless semiconductor design. And he said, tell your idea to everyone you meet. Learn how to say it in a way that you won't bore them, 30 seconds. And he said, you don't know who's going to be able to help you. You might meet them in a laundry. He said,
absolutely, yeah, like an elevator pitch.
Yeah, and just get a really good, and just tell everybody, because you don't know if you're talking maybe to the brother of the person that you need to go.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, and I've experienced this in my life in the last so many years.
Yes.
So good. I'm glad you guys are doing those things. And so then innovation is usually somebody knows how to do something. I forget its name now, but there was a network, a website where they would find problems and they would broadcast them out and say, $25,000 was a network of engineers if you can solve this problem. And what would happen, I went to a talk on this at Stanford in this research group I was in, and the guy, one of the people from it, is they said that when they researched it, the more distant the person was, the engineer, from the problem, the more likely that that was going to get solved. So I just can't encourage people too much to reach out to absolutely everyone, and that's how innovation takes place, borrowing things from one world into another social world into another social world. And not only will you find resources, you're going to be able to find answers to issues that you never even knew existed. So that's what I have to say about innovation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. William, what do you want to add? Some policy and policy related guideline? Yes.
Okay, well, no, I want to say ditto, Donald. How's that?
Okay.
No. So I actually, I that was facetious, but I mean it actually. Ditto. And I also think that part of the notion of innovation, it's asking the questions that no one knows the answer to. Like, how do we get this done? Or sometimes, why can't we do this? So, for example, with your program, it's like, why can't we get laptops to all these people and then start to measure it in a way that it hasn't been done before? So it's saying, what is it? And then why? And then figuring out how we get there. And that often, as Jim explained or mentioned, leads to the +1 for the X. And so sometimes we often think, or the misnomer is that innovation comes from one person in a basement or some secluded area with only a candle as a light, and they have this inspiration reflected on a cave wall, and then they change the world. No. Oftentimes it comes from seeing a need, discussing it with others, seeing what you do have, taking examples from past problems in terms of how they were approached and perhaps solved, applying it to a new situation, and then voila, you have a new industry. And so in that regard, the spirit of questioning is important, and the drive to get through it, as well as talking to everybody. Certainly we can do it now because everybody's got Zoom or StreamYard or whereby or whatever it is. I mean, to get in touch with just about anybody anywhere. So I do want to appreciate, I would say I appreciate, Sharif, you having me on the show, and I want to thank all of my co-guests. I do have to go for another meeting, but I look forward to seeing all of you again. And I'm just really excited and intrigued by the work that you're doing over in India. Really, it seems to me, in answer to the question that was asked earlier, what is innovation? How do you measure it? Or what does it look like? I say just look to the nation of India. I mean,
absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Everywhere across the board, multiple sectors, multiple subject matters, multiple social issues, multiple economic issues. After all, I mean, you have the greatest collection of talent. You have 1.38 billion people. And I figure, once you guys are able to tap into all of that collective creativity, the rest of the world should be concerned.
Thank you so much for saying that. Makes us feel good.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. William.
Thank you for adding value. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
You will help the rest of the world.
Okay,
we don't have to be cowering in fear. You will help the rest of the world. I don't believe that we have to be afraid of your innovation.
My question is that in terms of, because all of you are very experienced, you also run different kind of successful organization. There are many startup companies, they are asking these questions, that how they can implement innovation in their organizations, how they can be create more innovative strategy. Why innovation is important? Because they are very new. Many startup companies, they are asking this kind of questions. So I want to start these things with Professor Donalds, then Mr. Iftekhar, then Vishal, and then finally Mr. Jem Eats. So what do you want to add, and how they can start their innovation inside their organization?
Well, the most important thing is you have to ask what problem you're trying to solve. I mean, if I've seen 1,000 pitches easily, and I'm in a group that after they leave, we sit around and we talk about what they said. And I've been with some hotshot venture capitalists and angels and all these people in these groups that we talk. And the first thing we say is, okay,
what's the problem?
That group proposed a problem and they proposed a solution. So we're going to think about these guys. They actually, that gives them some sort of traction. And I think the answer to the question that you have about what to measure, see, that answer sort of built in, because you can look at the problem and you can say, is this problem being solved by what we're doing? And so the absolute first thing any startup has to do is be very, very clear about what problem they're trying to solve. And that's really it. That's what innovations are, is problems that get solved. So that's all I need to say about that. That was completely right.
Mr. Iftikhar, yes.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Professor Donald. I think that's how it should be. But the point I'd like to make is it's the attitude of the corporation that matters a lot. Most of the people don't let innovation happen within the corporation. That means they don't listen to voices of the people, because innovation can come from, ideas can come from places that you can never think of. So maybe an employee who you feel might just be insignificant in a department that doesn't have anything to do with innovation might just come up with a great idea. In fact, I know of a friend of mine, and he's written a book called Thinking Corporation. And everyone must look it up. Name is David Frood. He is in Sydney, and he has come up with processes and ways of getting innovation, encouraging people, speaking to people, and getting them to speak and get new ideas of maybe the process or product or the way the companies are doing the thing. So I think making people talk, interact, dialogue, and come up with their ideas is what one should, that sort of culture should be inculcated into corporations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, Mr. Vishal.
Yes, Dr. Sharif. So I think I look at it, innovation at 2 points. One is within corporates, and even startups kind of over a journey turn to corporates, right? They grow in size and this thing. So I think corporates, as I think both the guests mentioned, Iftikhar and Professor Donald, it's more of a cultural thing, right? How do you address ideas? You don't put something down, you explore new things and keep doing. So I think the corporates it will be like treat each of the teams as like mini startups, and they survive on coming up with disruptive, good new ideas. It could be incremental, it could be disruptive. That's the way I look at it from a corporate perspective. And for the startups, which is for us, because we are a startup in terms of this thing, I like the philosophy of Jeff Bezos, which is always thinking that you are on a day one and you stay day one, right? Don't get into the comfort zone. We did something which was very innovative, we did. But 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line, it's no more innovation. It's kind of been adopted within the ecosystem. So how do you stay? So you have to, I believe in the philosophy of day one, where you are always hungry, always looking to come up with something new. How do you do small things differently, or come up with radically new idea which can positively impact the ecosystem and not just you?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jim. Mr. James.
Oh yeah, after Jim. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do think that there's two different things. Like we talk about startups, which has innovation built into them, and we can talk about corporations that are established and they have a set way of doing things. So what you have to do if you want to be innovative in a community corporation such as that is you have to overcome the inertia. And one of the things that I was taught very early on was the first person that says, "But we've always done it that way," is the first person you fire. And I'm exaggerating a little bit to make a point. And the point is that you don't want to keep doing things the same way. And the person that suggests a different way should be valued. Now, a Major League Baseball player strikes out and or does not get a hit much more often than they do get a hit. So not every idea is going to be successful, but that is not to be met with punishing language like bad idea, bad person, go away. It's like keep coming with the ideas. That's what the corporation mentality has to be. Keep coming, keep pitching ideas, because one of them is going to be right and it's going to help us. And the ones that don't, the rest of us will put our heads together and say, no, we're not going to go down that path. Don't get discouraged. Keep pitching.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Professor Donald. Professor Donald.
I want to just say something very similar to what Jim just said, but I have lucky enough to get to know the organizational theorist James March, and he has a kind of humorous thing, but he's very serious, that corporations are meant to prevent innovation. And if you really go to management school and you really start thinking about it, ideally a corporation tries to make it so that every person is a moving part within a machine. And if that moving part goes out, human resources has this list of qualities of that part, and they go and they try and find somebody who's exactly the same as the person who left to fill in the parts, just like replacing pistons in a car or some spark plugs or something like that. And what winds up happening is within an organization, they get the hierarchical structures. And if you come up, I was working for a company called NetApp, and I got to say that they were very good for innovation. But even so, I would tell my manager about some problem that I'd seen and the solution to it. And he said, well, the way that we work is that we are implementing the strategy of the company. And so your job is to help implement the strategy of the company, not to come up with someone new. But that was such an interesting company that I actually sent my idea to the CEO or the CTO, and he actually talked to me about it and spent hours looking at my idea and actually supported it. But that's definitely the exception. And what companies wind up doing, March made this interesting point that the reason big companies with lots of sub-organizations in them can actually innovate is because they actually get a little bit less well run. In other words, the groups start becoming autonomous and start doing their own thing. And one group can do something and fail, because failure is a part of innovation. I mean, that's absolutely built in. And so one part of the organization can fail, but the organization can still thrive, but yet somebody else in the innovation tries some sort of an innovation. And so innovations actually come, a lot of companies, like Cisco is really big on doing this, is they don't do their own projects necessarily. People will quit Cisco. They'll see a problem at Cisco. They'll quit. They'll go out and make a solution to the problem, and then Cisco will be their customer. So they have a customer right at the beginning, and then ultimately Cisco buys them. But Machiavelli said that if the organization, you conquer another kingdom, the prince conquers another kingdom, he said you can either completely decimate it, or you can tax it and treat it as an independent organization, he said. But if you try and merge the two and assimilate the two cultures, it will always fail. Machiavelli, you're all that time ago. And so that's what a lot of organizations have to do, is they have to actually spin off new units and create new companies, because when you think about it, just think about it, is that every person there works with other people. They develop reciprocal obligations with those other people. And they're seeing these people every day. And the corporate structure or the corporate whatever is completely abstract. So every person is working with the obligations that they have with other people. I'm going to say one more thing and let the rest of you. In the United States Navy, they don't let managers be managers of a unit for more than 4 years. And then they move them to someplace else. and that's to keep that ossification where people, oh well, I'll let you slack off on this if you let me slack off on this, or whatever. All these reciprocal obligations start taking place, and research has shown that teams' productivity starts to decline over time. So that's what I'm saying, and that's why I'm super big on networks and expanding your networks and getting into different social worlds. Like if you're an engineer, I don't know, take an interest in art or music or something like that. I have a hobby of playing guitar, and at this guitar camp I went to was the chief technology officer of Oracle. I'd be able to meet that guy in real life,
Exactly.
So that's what I encourage you all, and that's
absolutely. Yeah. So
yes, definitely. I just want to add one point, because many of our audience actually join and they want to learn more about networking, and all of you are very successful man because of you have a very good network. So even if Mr. Iftekhar Pathan, if you add some of your experience that how to build up network, this is also important. I think we have many startup and many new entrepreneurs in our forum. Yes.
Sure. So before I talk about how to do networking, I'd just like to add a few points for what Professor Donald said. So in India, we have a concept of jugaad. I don't know if you've heard that word, but there has been reams of paper being written on it. The Indian way of innovating and doing things, the same things in a different way. And we are all Indians are known for frugal innovation. And I think Indians, basically, we are 1/6 or 1/7 the population of the world. And only issue is that we add to, in terms of patents, we just add 1.3% to the research side of it. But if you look at a country like Sweden, they have more than 40,000 innovations. So I think somewhere we lack going and patenting innovations and commercializing it. But otherwise, we are known for our frugal innovation all over the world. In fact, in Australia, I know of a university that I was invited to has an Indian Innovation Center there. So I think I agree with what Professor Donald said. And and talking about networking, basically, as Sharif, we've had a conversation before. I actually grew up in penury, and we didn't have the wherewithal, not the socio-economic background to go to good school or to colleges. So most of my education has been supported by good Samaritans and friends and relatives. But most of it also, I always say, has been extramural. So whatever today I have been able to achieve, I started the first job at rupees 500 in 1991, which is hardly a few dollars a month. But entire growth, I would definitely say that has happened only through networking. So if you take an example of how I and Vishal met, it is just out of my network. It is a friend that I know, someone who have kept the relationship for the past 20 years, who works in UK. And when the opportunity came, so I don't know who's Vishal, but Vishal approaches him and he asks him that, oh, I want to do something on my own in India. And he says, okay, one sec, I will introduce you to one Mr. Iftekhar Pathan. You must go and meet him. And that's how the network has probably got this, and that has culminated into Metasocial. And today we are doing one of the largest projects in the country. That is one example. The other example is that I am a part of a lot of important networks. I was the former member think tank of the World Entrepreneurship Forum, which was formed by the EM Lyon Business School in France. And we had consortium partners from Singapore as well. And that network gave me, so if you're with the right forum, then it gives me a huge amount of access to people all over the world. And sometime back, Dr. Sharif, you mentioned about BRAC. So BRAC is one of the largest NGO in the world. And Sir Fazle Abid, who was the founder, in fact, I met him in France at the World Entrepreneurship Forum. And I really respect them for what work that BRAC is doing. And then after 8 to 10 years, today when we were doing a project, I have now approached his daughter, Tamara Abid. who is now looking after the whole thing. So that is the network which builds. The other why I'm saying that you should be a part of some sort of important organizations like the WEF, and now I and Vishal work with an organization called WBAF, which is the World Business Angels Investment Forum in Turkey. So that gives us a network in maybe 125 countries, for example. We also are a part of Entrepreneurship Cafe, which is in 125 countries, started by Dr. Nikhil Agarwal, who's one of our partners on Metasocial. One of the programs that we did, this is again a practical example, in a large institute in my city, we had invited a gentleman from America, Indian origin, but he is the MD of Pfizer. He was the head of Pfizer for research. I met him, and then he introduced me. He said that the Lamborghinis of Bologna want to come to India. And when we conversed, he thought that, yes, I can deliver what I'm saying. So he introduced me to them. And the first deal of Tonino Lamborghini in India happened through me. So networking means being there at the right time, right place with the right people, and constantly being on the move and having a genuine attitude towards people, not plastic. You have to be seriously interested in what you are doing. Like Dr. Sharif, whenever I speak to you, I'm extremely genuine, and I'm always saying that you're doing great work. I mean it from bottom of my heart. So you have to have that attitude. You have to be gregarious. You have to have a good understanding of the world affairs that is happening, the geopolitics, the political situation, current affairs. So this is what are the basic attitude and the aptitude that one should have to connect to people, and obviously be part of larger organizations. So that is how I have networked. I don't know if it helps, but this is what.
Yes, I know, definitely. This
Wonderful,
is important.
thank you.
Yes, I think Professor Donald, you are also come up with the idea of networking in our first sessions. So if you want to add, because there are many youth, even already we are also engaging with lot of youth community. So in Asia Pacific. So how do you want to add your experience, even like Mr. Iftekhar Pathan, if you share your lifetime experience, this is also important for our audience.
Well, I can talk about it on two levels because the research I do is into social networks. That's what I was doing at Stanford. I was part of a group called the Silicon Valley Network Analysis Project, and we were looking at the networks of angels and venture capitalists and immigrants and various kinds of things, and how they work together to make Silicon Valley what it is. And it's not the only factor, but it's a very important factor. I think that the key thing is to open your mind to different interests, because so many people I know, I don't know if you have meetups in India, you probably do, but so many people, they're an offline way that people get together for various interest groups. So there's a deep learning meetup, and there's a poetry meetup. They're for every kind of thing that you could possibly imagine. And people have a tendency to only go to the places where the people are just like them. It's a natural thing. It's easy to want to do. But I want to point out, just think for a second of anything that you can get. All of the audience, think for a second of anything you get that's important. Think of 3 things that you get that's important that you don't get from other people.
Yes.
Think about it. Nothing. Yes. So my point is that every person is a door into another world. Every person can teach you something. Every single solitary person knows something that you don't know. And when the way that networking works is just look for that in the person. Find it in that person, learn from that person, because people just love it when you respect them and you're curious about them. And going to what he just said, that the reason that you want to have a broad understanding of the world is that it makes it easier to talk to different people. And then the other thing is after a while you start learning from people. I live in Palo Alto, and I would sit down at a pub, and I'd start talking to this guy, and what do you do here? And he says, well, I'm an advisor to Google on quantum computing. And I said, well, I've always been interested in quantum computing. Why don't you explain it to me? And really, really top experts can actually explain it in a way that you can sort of understand. And so then the next time I meet somebody that's interested in quantum computing, I have questions that I can ask them and show that I'm interested in them. That's what you really have to do, is just open your mind and have the attitude that you realize that every single solitary person, even that homeless person you walk by, every single person can teach you something about you, and then start finding out what that is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Very
Thank
well
you, Professor.
said. In fact, I should have mentioned how I met Dr. Sharif as well. So I went to Dhaka, and someone from there referred me to him, and since then I think we've just hit it off so well together. We are working in so many different things today. So that's the power of networking, and you do not know where those connections and what they will give you. Not necessarily you go looking for, it's not something to do with the usefulness of that person, but a genuine interest of what he's doing just leads you to things happening.
But I want to say you can think of it as an investment. And so in the idea of meetups, look, like I said, take a hobby, music, art, something else like that. Go someplace where the people aren't the same as you and try and learn from them. And one of the things that's an investment is, so often I'll meet somebody and they need something. And darned if I hadn't met somebody just a week ago that did that. And I'll put the two of them together, and and that builds my network, because all of a sudden there's these two networks that are hooked together that weren't hooked together before, and I'm the one who did it. So it just builds and builds and builds, and you can't do it by thinking that you want something. People go to networking events trying to sell stuff and all this kind of stuff, and that doesn't work. You have to change your attitude and realize that the networks themselves and the people, networks are people. And so that the people themselves are what you're looking for for yourself. Like, you're going to be smarter, you're going to be a better person. Everything is going to be better by just opening your mind and trying to learn from everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Mr. Vishal, how do you want to add your experience in terms of, yes.
I think Professor Donald and Iftikhar Prathan, so my co-founder, put it so nicely. I think it's really that. It's being able to be part of groups, other interest groups. Actually, and this is Professor Donald really worked for me, but you don't look at always what you want. You just connect one person to another person, right? You may not have directly something to help that person because you may not be from their domain, but you may always have another person who can kind of connect, and that has really helped us this thing. So I look at it as being part of different groups, interest groups, part of now it's virtual because of COVID, part of networks virtually, better offline, probably, hopefully someday post the COVID era, and just show up there, just show up, go talk to people, okay, be genuinely interested, listen to what they're saying. Don't talk a lot, just listen to what people are saying and just try to help in whatever way. Or if you can't, just listen, because people really like when somebody is interested in something that you're doing, okay? And that's all it is about, because you just meet up people. Most important is show up, because I used to be a very close person earlier. For me, it's the kind of getting there and talking to strangers was very, very difficult. But thanks to my mentor, one of my mentors in UK while I was working there, Dr. Nick Adatia, he kind of helped me open up. Just go to the forums. You didn't know, you didn't anything. Just go start talking to people, and you find really interesting people. I've made fantastic friends. In fact, what Iftikhar said is through a very common friend of mine, very dear friend in UK while I was working with them. Iftikhar is this thing. We were just meeting up. I had come back to India and I was just meeting up for a coffee, and I said, I'm doing this. If I didn't have Hari and this, we would have never met and this would have never happened. So I think it's just talking, just showing up is everything.
Yes. Yes, I think Mr. Iftikhar Pathan want to add
Let me
something.
say one other little thing, which is
Okay.
the magic words are, how can I help you? You may not be able to, but
Absolutely.
if you look for every person and you're thinking of how you can help that person and be sincere, those are the magic words, I'm telling you. And one other thing is they did a study in Boston no, actually it was in Chicago, right? Where they had a group of graduate students get on the train, and they divided them into three groups, control and blah, blah, blah. But basically, their assignment was to strike up a conversation with whoever was standing next to them. And people are afraid to do that. And every single solitary person that did that had a better day, felt better about themselves, and the person they struck up the conversation with talked to them. Even if they were sitting there on a laptop next to them or something else, every single solitary person was glad that someone talked to them. So don't be afraid to go up and talk to somebody. I mean, they're going to love it. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. This is actually, sorry about that. This is actually a very excellent idea, specifically innovations, networkings, and other things. But in the COVID period, as all of you are expert from industry, my question is that what industry we should focus more? Example, in South Asia. What your advice, Mr. Iftikhar Pathan? Because there are many international corporations and the universities and the policymakers, they are joining in World Talent Economy forums. So what do you think? What area that people can focus on South Asia? It's not only India, even India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. You have a lot of experience. So how do you want to share your?
Yeah, so I will,
Yes.
if you ask me today, I will say that any business that is in sync or is, linked to the sustainable development goals
Mhm.
will be good, because I personally want to work in the areas which has an impact side to it. So it might be
Mhm.
water, it might be health, it might be financial inclusion, using obviously the tech layer. So that's definitely what I think. And if you talk of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, all of us are similar in nature, and there is a lot of
Mhm.
innovation happening. So we should
Mhm.
look at technologies, new technologies that will, because see, there are common problems we face. If you look at the Southeast Asia and the Asian side, that we have a huge amount of population, and we have the cities which are choked today. We have issues with energy. We have a huge issue: water, sanitation, education, and healthcare. So any business that
Mhm.
caters to these pressing issues should be taken up by innovators. That's what I feel.
Mhm. Thank you, Professor Donald. Yes. How
Well,
do you want to add your? Yes.
I agree with that. That right now we're converting from uh, petroleum or fossil fuel based energy to other kinds of energy. In fact, this week's Economist was something like the end of coal, and we're basically, the whole world is stopping using coal. Well, we've got to replace it with something else, and so all of the energy technologies are very great. Not everybody wants to do, not everybody's kind-hearted in a way. And some people, when they have a business, the only great thing that they want is to make as much money as possible, which is reasonable. Of course, it's a business. And right now, the whole world is having to change into a kind of a hybrid mode. It's never going to be the same here in Silicon Valley. People that have been working at home, they want to keep working at home. Plenty of them do. And so all the facilities are going to start being empty, and the technology is pretty lame, really, because this whole thing about networking, when you got to meet the person, it's, I mean,
Yeah,
it's much more successful when you meet the person. So there's a huge
undoubtedly.
amount of opportunity there to try and improve the way that we actually can connect with people online. That's huge
Yeah.
opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for
Yes.
example, India by 2030 will need 130 times more of energy, the industry, and which we definitely don't have. So there is a huge opportunity in that as far as business is concerned. In India, we throw away 80% of the food stuff, what as much as the Australian continent produces, because we don't have storage facilities. So that is, I think, another extremely positive business idea as well. So these are the things I basically think we should look at.
Thank you, thank you. This is really, really interesting idea, and definitely in the future we're gonna discuss more. We were
Thank you.
arranging different kind of summit and conference. Definitely, we're gonna invite you all. So I
Yes.
directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start from Mr. Vishals, then Mr. Iftekhar Pathans, and finally Professor Donalds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif, for this, I think, interesting dialogue. Thank you, Donald, and the other guests who are present. Very interesting inputs, and that will help us kind of build a better roadmap for what we are doing. In terms of, we will look at the impact, we will look at some of the other aspects that we spoke about. Just a concluding, I think, I take it the cue from the last thing. In India, if you pick up any use case, right, which is the right problem, it's $1 billion kind of opportunity. And but what I think we need to focus more, which Professor Donald and Mr. Patan, my co-founder, said, is to look at how do we do social impact commercialization. Because if you look at climate change, if you look at plastic, you look at water, these are $1 trillion opportunities, green energy, right? I think this is what we need to focus on, which is building circular economy. How do we build things together, which is not just related to profit, but how do you create a social impact? And there's a lot of models that we can bring in for commercializing that, which positively impacts the planet and helps everyone as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vishal. Mr. Iftekhar Pathan.
Yeah, so I just like to thank you, Dr. Sharif, for this beautiful session, wonderful session. And I was pleasantly surprised to have Professor Donald and the other very erudite men on the panel. So once Gandhiji said that it's better to pleasure one heart than 1,000 people bowing in prayers. So that's what I'd like to tell people. And I'd also like to urge all the people who are listening to this program and who will listen in the future to whatever ideas they have and however, in whatever ways they should support this digital Daan program that we're doing in India. And I think, Dr. Sharif, we should learn from what you did last time in 2012. And I just want people to help in not just money, but just putting in some time or suggesting any ideas. And thank you once again.
Thank you. One thing I just want to add, like South Asian, like Asian people, even definitely we have many well-wisher from North America, from Europe. Actually, Indian people, they have a big heart. So when they works, and if they work together, I'm sure it will be successful, because last 10-12 years I saw a lot of success in the South Asians, and it's really, when I have experience from North America, experience from Europe and Australia, but I want to share that as that South Asia have the huge community, huge population, this is actually one of the great strength for the South Asian community. So I believe that if we can integrate it, more knowledgeable person like Professor Donalds, Dr. Williams, or Mr. James, and we have many people from, even we are collaborating with MIT, Oxford. So the more we can collaborate with the big organization like that, and the scholar people like Professor Donalds, we get more success. Sure. That is for I'm sure. Yes, Professor Donald.
Well, somebody said this in one of the earlier sessions, and so I'm stealing it, which is that every problem that needs a solution is a potential business. And some businesses are resource-based, like, so for instance, you have to have oil or something else like that. But most people's problems don't need that. I mean, solar and things like that are resource problems, and they're huge, and we absolutely depend on it. Our society can't exist without energy. But there's problems. We sort of hit on it about management, about growing things, there's so many ways of problems that you can solve, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They see a problem and they figure out a way to solve it. And so maybe India has more problems than the United States. I'm not sure actually, but if the more problems you have in a place, the more opportunity you have to solve them. So I want to say one thing, that it's something I heard a long time ago when England was first taking over China. They took it over for a while. The Indian businessmen said, if we could just add 1 inch to every Chinaman's coat, we'd be rich. Very rich.
Yes.
So I guess if we could just add 1 inch to every Indian's coat, we'd be very, very rich.
Thank you. It's a really nice sessions, and hopefully this kind of session we will arrange more, and definitely we have a plan after definitely the COVID impact. We will arrange a conference in Malaysia. We will invite all of our guests, and especially Professor Donald. I know that you have many students, even Mr. Iftekhar Pathan, Vishals, you have a very strong network and many successful events you have. So World Talent Economy Forums, actually we are running like an open source, and everything 100% free, and the people like you, those who join here, they're sharing their views. I'm sure there is a hundred of contents, and from this content many of the youth community, they're gonna get a lot of support, lot of knowledge, lot of interesting things. Like we have a lot more plan, but example, as you are distributing your laptop, maybe you can share World Talent Economy Forum contents. I'm sure they will be more benefited. Even
that's
recently,
a great idea. That's a great idea.
And there are many successful people like you and professors and the industry people, they are joining. So I'm sure your students and your youth community will be benefited, and this is 100% free. So the more you want to share, you can share our content. So thank you. I'm sure when Iftekhar Pathan, Vishals, they are taking initiative, I'm sure it will be successful, because I know that you have a very good strategy and a strong strategy. Previously you make many successful projects, so definitely this project will be very successful. Even if we find any of the Indian community, Bangladesh community, they want to, even the American communities, they want to contribute for your project, definitely we will connect with you. So thank you for your valuable time. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
I want to say I eat my own dog food, and I'm doing this. That's a great expression when you think about it. I eat my own dog food, but I'm here partially for the network and networking ability, and I was really glad to meet you too. You guys are just fascinating. Of course, Sharif is, we've gotten to be friends, and I really appreciate what he's doing.
Thank you, Professor Donald.
Thank you.
Really pleasure to meet you and be friends.
Thanks a ton.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.